Did you know that high levels of stress are one of the worst things you can do for your digestive system, and it could be absolutely wrecking your gut health? Worse still, you could have this silent destruction going on in the background and you're not even aware of the problem. In fact, you'll only be aware of the problem once it starts to get really bad and you get things like bloating and digestive discomfort, acid reflux, and even the more serious problems like IBS and IBD. Most people are unaware that there's actually a direct connection between the brain and the gut. And that connection is by something called the vagus nerve. You may have heard of it before, but the vagus nerve connects the brain to the gut. In fact, it connects the brain to almost all your other organs, which is why when you're stressed, it causes such havoc on the body. Later on in this video, I'm going to explain how we can improve what's called vagal tone, which will help your body deal with stress so it doesn't affect you in the same way. But first, how does stress negatively impact digestion? Well, the first and probably the most important way that stress impacts digestion is by reducing stomach acid. Now, most people think that they have acid reflux because they have too much acid. Actually, in most cases, in thousands of people I've worked with, they don't have enough acid because it's being suppressed by things like H. pylori bacteria or yeast overgrowth. Now, when you're stressed out, your body is what we call a fight or flight state. It is in a high level of stress. It is the complete opposite to where we want to be most of the time, which is a rest and digest state. So when you're in that fight or flight mode, your body thinks, okay, well, I don't need stomach acid to digest my food because I have more important things to worry about. I'm running away from a lion. And when you run away from a lion, you don't have to worry about digesting yesterday's dinner, so your body suppresses your acid production. The problem with that is you open yourself up to bacterial infections inside the stomach, like H. pylori, which is the #1 cause of acid reflux, in my opinion. But not just H. pylori. You can get an overgrowth of yeast inside the mouth in the esophagus. You can cause problems like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because remember, your stomach acid is the first line of defense against the outside world. Nothing is truly in your body unless it passes through the acid inside the stomach. So that can mean an increased chance of parasites, bacterial infections in the small intestine, fungal overgrowth inside the small intestine, and as I said before, H. pylori, which is a really dangerous bacteria, causes reflux, stomach ulcers, and even stomach cancer. Number 2, it causes bigger issues in digestion further down the line. So when your acid is not high enough, it means all the other digestive processes after struggle. So your gallbladder won't release enough bile, your pancreas won't make enough enzymes, and so your digestion causes problems further down. And that's how you can get a lot of SIBO type issues. If food travels through slowly, you don't have enough enzymes, you don't have enough of the right hormones, then you can get all sorts of problems in that small intestine region, which affects your digestion. But not only that, high levels of stress can actually kill your beneficial bacteria that live inside your colon, which are essential to making sure you have a nice, healthy life. For example, if you kill some of the really beneficial butyrate producing bacteria, you won't get as much cross-feeding, where the byproducts of vegetable fermentation feed other bacteria in the area. We call that cross-feeding. And then those bacterial byproducts like butyrate, acetate, propionate, they will feed the lining of your gut to prevent things like leaky gut. So high levels of stress will damage your beneficial bacteria, eventually making things like leaky gut worse. And talking of leaky gut, high levels of stress are going to mean high levels of histamine inside the body, and high levels of histamine can damage those very specific, what we call tight junctions inside the small intestine, which will cause some leaky gut. Now you want to be careful that you're not under stress too much and for too long, because the longer you're under stress, the more you have these problems. The third way that stress impacts the body is it will stimulate you to overeat, or in some people to undereat. Both of these are not good for digestion. In the first case, where you're overeating, you're placing more stress on your digestive system. It has to work harder. And when it does that, it causes problems over the long term. Also, when you're overeating, you are very rarely overeating high quality meats, fruits, and veggies. You're almost always going to be consuming some ultra processed food, which all we know damages the gut bacteria with the additives and the colors and the things that they add in to keep it shelf stable. They're also going to damage the gut bacteria. So you're going to be overeating, and you're going to be overeating the wrong foods, which is going to create more stress, more inflammation, and make the problem worse. Undereating, while it doesn't seem like a stressful problem, undereating is also a problem. If you don't take enough calories for your body to survive, it will raise your stress hormones to break down fat tissue to provide energy. And when you do that and you're already stressed, you're making that system more stressed, which is why when I see a lot of people who are stressed, I never really recommend low carb or low calorie diets. It will increase your stress to provide more energy. The fourth way that stress seems to attack your body is that it will waste minerals, essential ones like magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that is essential in over 1,000 enzymes in the body, and nothing works in the body without the enzymatic process to convert one thing into another. Now, magnesium is the mineral that your body releases during periods of stress to calm you down. And the more stressed you become, the more magnesium you release, and the more magnesium you waste. And magnesium is one of those minerals that is very, very hard to find in foods. You become low in magnesium, and it's not immediately obvious. The first sign of being low in magnesium, in my experience, would be something like tiredness, and then things like constipation and muscle cramping. So if you had one of those and you've been stressed for a really long time, it's probably because you're wasting too much magnesium and not replacing it properly. The fifth way that stress causes problems, I alluded to earlier, is that you get some overgrowth of fungus. So for example, candida for me is the second biggest cause of acid reflux inside your mouth, in and around your esophagus, but it proliferates all over the body. How do you know if you have too much fungus inside the body? It starts to appear on the outside of the body. Fungal toenails, fungal fingernails, athlete's foot, thrush, dandruff. If you get any of those and you get acid reflux, you can say for sure that your problem is caused by yeast, and you would use something like the yeast purge capsules to try and reduce that amount of yeast inside the body. But the underlying problem is the stress allowing it to take over. Okay, so there's a fair few ways that stress can negatively impact the body. Don't forget to follow on and like and subscribe to these videos to make sure you never miss out on this information that I don't really post anywhere else. Now we know how stress negatively affects the body, what can we do about it? I'm going to give you 4 things that you can implement in your life to reduce the likelihood of the stress damaging your system. Remember, stress is unavoidable. Everybody has stress, but it's how that stress affects your system every day depends on whether it is a major problem or not. Now remember, we spoke earlier about the vagus nerve, and that's why people talk about the gut-brain connection or the gut-brain axis. So there's a nerve that directly connects your brain to your gut. You'll know about it mainly when you get butterflies. You'll feel really nervous up here, and all of a sudden your stomach starts doing somersaults. That's the vagal nerve connection we're talking about. But one way to reduce the effect of stress on that body is to improve what we call vagal tone. You can kind of see it as we can handle more stress without it affecting our body. So there's a couple of ways that you can stimulate the vagus nerve to improve vagal tone. The first one would be singing. The second one is gargling, oming, like they do in yoga. And the fourth one is you can actually buy a little device called a sensate that you put on your chest and you turn it on and it vibrates and stimulates the vagus nerve. That's probably my favorite way of doing it. Next up, you can use some very specific supplements for anxiety. When you're anxious, it generally means you're living too far in the future, which is not an easy thing to overcome in a short period of time. But what I like my clients to take is L-theanine. And theanine is an amino acid that's just a broken down protein that works really, really well for people who suffer from anxiety. The first supplement I normally recommend for people who are overly stressed is magnesium. Remember, you use magnesium to calm your body down during periods of stress. So when you go for a period of extreme stress, I like to add in a little bit of magnesium longer term to make sure that your levels are still high so you can handle more stress than the average person. Finally, I like to use herbs called adaptogens. Now, adaptogens are herbs that we've used as humans for thousands of years to help manage stress. There are adaptogens where you can take in the morning that will raise your stress levels. For example, if you can't get up or you're someone who needs 10 coffees in the morning, you can take things to raise your stress in the morning. Likewise, in the evening, you can take things to lower your stress levels down. And that's when I prefer to use most adaptogens. Things like ashwagandha, schisandra berry, rhodiola are all fantastic adaptogens that you can take for a period of time when you're going through stress so it doesn't affect your body and cause these long-term digestive problems.